Now, another myth you kind of get confused is the Garden of Eden was not perfect, but it was very good at the end of day 6, right? Now, day 7 is what your confusion, right? Steps in, right? Not only was it as 1,000 years as well, that's where you're confused, right? Adam lived 930 years, right? Minus 1,000 means he sinned in the 70th year, right? Okay, you see what it did there? Moses too. And then in Psalms 94, he says what he says about 1,000 years being as watching night, right? And then Peter takes it up and says the day says 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is day 1, right? That goes all back to the first day, right? Even if hypothetically no one was there but God and Jesus forming the planet. Though Jesus was in his celestial form still, not yet a terrestrial form, that wouldn't be until day 4. Or day 3. Now, right? There's 2 ways to do that. There's what's called the progenitor of the species, and he's neither male nor female, right? And then you become male and female and start reproducing. You understand? The progenitor is an adult chicken, but the chicken is both male and female and then made into 2 chickens, right? It's the rooster and the hen, right? It's the progenitor of the species. If there's a hairless cat, right, and every other cat has hair, how does it have hair, right? Or no hair, right? It has to be designed, right? It can't be bred, right? Unless that's part of what? How it was designed, right? Now, if the angels who sinned with men before the flood, right, and took the daughters of men as wives, right, all whom they chose, right, one, they're leaving some men without women, right? You know what that means. They're hoarding the women, right? Satan hoards things, right? He don't share. That's another thing about the devil you forget, right? He's the one who don't know how to share. He's the one who can't reason with, right? And when you take his mind, you're against everyone, including yourself, right? You're not attacking me because I'm wrong. You're attacking me because you know I'm right, right? And you know what I'm saying about marriage. Marriage can be anyone of any age as long as they're over the age of consent, right? But that's 18 to 52, right? Do you understand, right? I can also be with someone older than me if they show me attention too. I told you that too, right? But age is the problem though, right? In Georgia, I was told it was 16. And like I said, right? If someone lied to me, right? Then, right? And I believe it now, and I'm mentally ill when in 93 I started hearing voices because of work-related stress, right? Fasting for a few days, right? And maybe a little sleep deprived, you understand. That could be also a physical reason to hear the voices as well. Right. Though I didn't go around telling people God was talking to me until then either, right? I didn't tell no one in the church God talked to me, right? And told me to tell you this, right? Until I heard the voice in 93, right? Now I did tell Pastor Thomas, right, and Pastor Davis, I dreamed of a throne that I was standing before it, and God told me by the dream I'm one of the 2 witnesses, right? And read the Bible, right? See what I did there when I first told them, right? Is I told them scripturally by the Bible, God had told me I'm one of the 2 witnesses by the dream, Now, maybe they were confused about it themselves. Because, see, they're the two head pastors of the church, and Pastor Thomas even married his daughter, right, and things like that, and Pastor Payne, his other daughter, right. And again, right, Pastor Payne was like the second to Pastor Davis, and then Pastor Thomas went to Norfolk and started his own church, right. Right. That's someone who knows the history of the church too, right? Means I really went out there and really got involved with it, but then I found out how they dealt with unitship didn't sit with me, right? Not to judge them for it, but I just didn't want to become a part of that and do that myself, right? Because you're sexually being immoral with another male, right? You calling everything immoral, moral. Well, it's also immoral to let another man touch you, right? And release your sperm onto his head, right? You understand what I mean, right? Now, it doesn't say nothing that you can't do it by yourself, like I showed you in Leviticus 15, right? It also don't say you can't have sex with a woman, right? Premarital or not, right? But what it does say and don't say, right, is by grace, right? Now, dating, like I told you, is also according to the laws in America, right? That means I can date an 18-year-old to a 52-year-old if they show me an interest, right? And act like they want to date me, right? I can even date a woman 10 years older, right? And why do I call her a girl or a woman? That's what I was taught to call them, girl or women, right? Lady, right? Now, some call them sluts, some call them bitches, some call them bad names, right? Too, I try not to, but again, right? Because if I call you the N-word, I didn't know why other people in the South were using it, and I didn't mean it how they were saying it to you. I thought the N-word meant something else, right? I thought it was a way to refer to you, but in a jokingly manner, because of how I learned it through Eddie Murphy and Nick Nolte and all that. So I didn't know, right? And this ain't to make an excuse for it, I just didn't know, right? The word was also used by former slave owners, of which my granddaddy may have been part of the KKK, like I told you before, right? And I can't do nothing about that, right? All I can tell you is I know that's wrong and that racism in there, right? That calling them the N-word is wrong, right? I understand now what you mean, right? And I was just told the word means black anyway, and there's another way to refer to one as being Negro, or right? Which I can say because that's the Spanish word and it's not offensive and it's not used the same way. Don't get me, right? If I say, Negro, please, or something like that, you know I'm joking, right? Right. But if I say it negatively, right, you can say any word negatively or positively. Even MF can be said jokingly to someone or seriously, right? Now, you're calling me a stepdaughter molester, but I've never touched her. I was in the living room, right? See, I keep denying what you're saying I did because you're not a witness. Not even my ex-wife, if she came in there, can say anything really happened, right? Because she would be the only one to remember it, silly, right? I fell 3 stories, got knocked out on the way down. How the hell would I remember if my stepdaughter woke me up in the middle of the night? 11 years before I even got on E-tip, right? But I would say by what I know is I was around her and I could have molested her, but didn't, right? Do you hear what I'm saying, right? And yes, I'm mentally ill, but that don't mean I did anything with my stepdaughter just because I'm mentally ill alone, sleeping on the couch, right? Something is cranking your head, right? Inside of it. And you're not grasping the concepts of what I'm saying, right? Almost like you're wickedly ill worse than me and won't get treated for it. And you know it, right? You know something's wrong with the way you're thinking. You're more perverted in the way you think than I am. You have to imagine the child doing that with me, right? I do too. Whole point, right? And you're not listening. It's like talking to, again, right? A person who thinks they're right, but they're wrong. And the only thing that'll stop them is death. True. And see, you're dying, right? And murdering another man murders you. That's why you die of natural causes without doing nothing wrong, right? You're also, by killing the man, condemning yourself, right? And that is found in Genesis. When you murder someone, you're murdering yourself, right? And back then, even when Cain slew Abel, right, he had to get him marked so he wouldn't be slain, right? But he still died, right? He was still punished with death, right? He couldn't escape his own sin, right? And died because he murdered his own brother, right? Though it was of natural causes. His heart just stopped, like everyone else's heart has stopped since the fall of man, right? And that happened 6,000 years ago, according to the Hebrew Bible. Now, there are a lot of different religions who have different ideas and concepts of that. There's nothing wrong with that. But it does start getting wrong when you're offering your children up to these so-called deities and burning them alive. That's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, and even a mental person can tell you that. And I know because I know, right? Now, my ministry is as long as I'm alive, idiot. Even if you're trying to kill me now and aren't, get with the program, right? Uh-oh. And you need to calm down, right? You're so angry, you're the wrath of God, right? That's because God is not quick to wrath, right? He's slow to wrath, right? And his wrath is the evil you're doing to your fellow mankind because of the color of their skin, or their nationality, or their sexual orientation, right? Even, right? The reason the shipmates had a problem with me is they're trying to make me their bitch, right? And I said no, right? And so they gave me poor evals. Wouldn't train me in a job you gotta be trained to do, you don't know what you're doing, right? You don't even know what you're working on if you've never seen it before, retards, right? Excuse my French there, slow people who are born in that condition. I'm not saying that towards you, but this person would not be mentally ill or have a birth defect, right? They're so slow, right? I cannot reason with them, right? No man can, not even Jesus himself probably, and he's on a man, right? And the male and female are one in him fully, right? You can't describe someone as having a male chest and then a female chest, and that person not be able to even become both, or maybe even in three forms, a combination of both, right? I think it's the combination of both men we have, all of us, and the ladies have a problem with, right? Why? Because we were lied to about it by Constantine. That's why. And the Orthodox, right? See, they walk by sight. They see the dominant male, right? The beastly male as the king, right? Survival of the fittest is what the scientists talk about, right? And yet you can't have one without the other. If you go gay, you still need surrogate with females and things like that to have your baby, right? Rather than having sex naturally, I guess you like the male more than the female. But here's the hypocrisy of being gay. If you want a child, even if you adopt one, they don't come from a gay union. You can't have a baby that way. You have to have a third party as a surrogate, right? Or a sperm donor if you're two females, right? To have a child as well. It's kind of like in Barbarella with Jane Fonda. You're wanting to replace real sex and love with your own idea of it, and that's okay. Legally, you can do it. Permissively, even, right? I can give you permission to do it because you're doing it anyway, right? But now I'm giving you permission to do it not because it's right or wrong, but because I love you anyway and I don't want to hurt you for doing it either, you understand? I'm not the punishment of God, right? I'm not to hurt you for finding the same sex attractive, but nor are you to hurt me for finding the opposite sex attractive and supporting gay people. You're not to do that either, right? But it's the wording you're taking out of context. Immorality is the opposite of morality, right? Right? Who said it was an immoral thing? Now, they have a Hebrew word that they interpret as abomination, right? That's used when it talks about a man lying with a man as he lies with a woman. But who wrote the 5 books of Moses? Moses doesn't refer to himself normally as Moses, right? If you're writing your own book, you will say, I did this or I did that. Anoki is I, by the way. But if someone else writes the book as a biographer, they're also an outsider of the man's life, right? That's why they're telling you the story about how he was found in the ark. Moses was in the ark. He would say, I was floating down the river in the ark. Right. And then the princess found me, right? In the first person. Same with Jesus. He had biographers named Matthew, Luke, and John. And Luke wrote the book of Acts, and then Paul, and then James, his brother, Peter and John and Jude, right? And then John wrote Revelations to write about him, right? Which we've used for our own pleasure and pain, right? We've murdered people because we think they're immoral. We murdered the Jews for rejecting the Bible and Jesus when it says they would. But what did Jesus tell you to do about an unbeliever? Leave them alone. They be the blind leader of the blind and they'll fall into the pit, right? In other words, they'll die anyway. Don't try to force them to follow me. I want them to love me and follow me. Anyway. And I want you to love them even if they don't love you, right? As I showed you by going to the cross because of all your sins, right? We've all sinned and fall short of the glory of God. This is what it means to minister for Jesus, even if you're alone, too, and you don't know what's going on either, right? That's all you can say. I don't know what's going on any more than you. I'm only 52. I just got here myself, right? I was born in 1969. When were you born, right? Now, if I'm trying to find a girlfriend and you say you're 37 and you go with me in the bathroom, you're acting like you're 37, right? I don't do that a lot either, right? Unless I'm doing it and not aware of it, right? I told you that too, right? Exactly. No. See, I make too much sense in the senseless world, right? Because I see nobody's making sense. See, you're all calling yourself normal, but you're violent people. You attack people for the wrong things. Now, if I play you a compliment and say you look like a model, and show you a picture of a girl that looks like a model, right, and you look like the model, why would that make you mad anyway? Hypothetically, right? They know what I mean. But if they lie about it and say he assaulted the woman, right, when they have other witnesses of the man's own race, right, who knows he didn't do that, in a trial, they should be called as witnesses to rebut the woman's statement. I know that. In a fair trial. See, the woman was lying about how the boy did it, right? I'm sorry, I have to talk about this a bit. I know. And made up what really happened when he didn't do what was said of him, right? And he had his kin as witnesses, right? But see, she's the kin of the man accused, or the two men accused, and they even admitted to it and got money for it, right? I know, right? I know. But see, evil triumphs when good people don't speak up, right? Now, you don't join them by being evil back or you both die, right? And you too, we're all dying of natural causes because we don't know why now. We don't know what we're doing wrong, but obviously we're still doing something wrong, right? Only Jesus was resurrected from the dead 2,000 years ago. We don't even know how, right? Well, that would be something important to tell his disciples besides the works he did, right? Besides some of the things he said. What did he tell you in secret, right? I don't think you're telling us everything either he told you. How come you write the Bible till he goes back into heaven, right? But for 40 days, he's teaching you the Old Testament too, right? The whole Old Testament. You only had the Old Testament. So what happened, Christians? Do we think the Old Testament is no longer relevant and that we can only follow the new, which is sin? No. That's exactly what happened, right? You're taking the writings of Paul as gospel when he's dealing with the old first and going to the Jews first and teaching in the synagogues from the old, right? To the Jew first. Then he's trying to bring it to the Gentiles, right, too, but it's still the old and what it said about Jesus, not yet the new until he started commenting and writing the different churches, right? And he had a scribe because he had vision problems too, right? Let's put this in perspective, Christians. The New Testament is supposed to complement the Old, and it does if you really follow the whole thing, right? But you're taking out over a third of the scriptures because you're not comfortable with us saying, right? Being men, we're not comfortable with a progenitor being male and female, but he would be if he's a man, right? Or an adult, right? Because it's the reverse of being born male or female, right? You're both. It's like yin and yang becoming yin or yang, Chinese. And being two halves of the whole. Another way to put it, right? Now we're all supposed to reason together, saith the Lord, right? Or Yahuwah, from Eliyahu and Netanyahu. Using an ancient name for Yahoo, right? And a new one for Yahoo, right? Are you afraid, Jews, that the Christians or other people will learn the name of God and use it against you because you're not using it, but on the day of the B'Tselem, right? Maybe. Are you even saying it right yourself, right? See, it's like with witchcraft, right? So even in witchcraft, you got to use the right words and intonation to get the spell done right, right? Right, John Hagee? Well, the same thing with the name of God, right? There's only one real true way to say it, right? And it's in the consonants, it's in the vowels, but it's also in other Hebrew names. And one of the biggest endings of the name is Yahoo, right? Well, Yahuwah is the feminine of Yahoo, like Sar and Sarah. Get it, John? Rebel of the rebels? Witches of the witches in Eastwick? You're a rebel too, brother. And the sin of rebellion is the sin of witchcraft. If I figured it out in under 52 years, the name might be Yahoo or Yahuwah, you don't want to know the divine name, right? You don't want to say it. No, you're not worthy to say it, and you're lying about that, because Jesus never said no one was worthy of the truth. You're saying that and choosing not to say it. With the Jews who aren't saying it because they're afraid of it falling into the wrong hands, or something like that, or being used against them. Because if you quit using something, you remove the protection of it, right? If the divine name is to give you power with God by referring to it as being Yahoo and Yahuwah, right? It knows what you're saying then to it, right? If you're addressing it as Moses told you to as well, and then you can be saved yourself, right? But if you don't say it, but on the Day of Atonement and you say it wrong, right? Or you use Yahuwah, or Yahuwah, or something it's not, right? And it knows how you're supposed to say it too, right? You're willfully choosing not to use it when it says, they that call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved, right? If you're not calling upon the name of the Lord as it was pronounced by Moses and Elijah, and Malachi, and Moshe is M-S-H-H. It's funny, though, here's the thing about the S, right? It's either a double S with an H, or a single S, or an SH, right? You see what I mean? Right. It could be Mo Sa, and you don't know, and you don't know. Why don't you know? You're not asking God. What is this letter really supposed to represent, right? Is it S or a double S? Moses was a stutterer, by the way. S is a hard letter to say if you're a stutterer, and I know because I've heard of people who stutter, and that's sometimes, right? One of the hardest words and letters is to say is P, B, or S. And they slur their words. Now, who's writing it and created the Hebrew language in the first place? Some say God wrote it first, right? Some say Moses came up with it, right? He was schooled in Egyptian religion first, right? And Hebrew, right? Again, right? Well, like, it wasn't like in the Ten Commandments, which are all listed now, right? When he killed the man, right? He ran into the wilderness, right?